He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
I hope you're having a great day. This is Coast View, but I actually should say welcome to the Nicholas Conger Show. Nick Conger, Dr. Nick Conger, has been a regular guest of this show, and he sort of sets an example for helping to create a coastal Mississippi that's better to live, work, and play in. And that could not be more important than today as it relates to the pandemic. He's an internist at Memorial. He specializes in infectious diseases, and he's been on the show several times. And so that's why I'm going to rename Coast View to the Nicholas Conger Show. What do you think about that, Nick?
Well, I appreciate you having me and letting us talk a little bit longer and explain a little bit more for this certainly complicated infection. So I'm glad to be back.
One of the things I did in preparation for the show today, I think this may be the fourth time you've been on. I can't remember the exact number of times, but I went back and listened to the very first show that we did together. And you know what amazes me, well, it shouldn't amaze me because you've been very consistent from the very beginning. In that first show you talked about, you were concerned about setbacks because even though you might have been talking in terms of the potential for a second wave, you weren't even sure if we had the first wave yet because the reality was we had only had, our numbers were pretty low, so to speak. You said that you were concerned about what if it were a second wave or a continuation of the first wave, that if we had a setback, that people might overreact to the uptick. And what we didn't need to do is shut things down again. You were really expressing the point of view that you didn't want people to panic, but that you were preaching social distancing and mask wearing. And that's something I've tried to be consistent about from the very beginning. And we've focused on it time and time again on this show, that these are the tools we have. We have to use the tools that are at our disposal. But you've been on to it from the very beginning. The thing that might have changed a little bit has been we're learning more. We're learning more about various strains of COVID and our own experience. And it all comes ultimately back to what the hospital's experience is and whether the hospitals are overwhelmed and whether, ICUs are overwhelmed and all of that. But so you've been super consistent from the very beginning. But what's the latest?
Well, so, the numbers are high, and we've been hearing about that in the news, and people are concerned, and they're rightfully concerned. I do have a little bit of hope. I always try to see the good and the bad and everything, and it does look like these southern states are plateauing. So I think what happened is, I don't even know if it's the way we opened up. I mean, because you look at some states like Georgia and Colorado, they opened up early, and they didn't have cases for 4 or 6 weeks. It really was. And I'm not blaming it all on the protests, but that weekend where we had all the protests, I think that exposed a lot of people. And then I think the way that was handled, we've talked about inconsistency. And, President Trump had that one rally, and you said, is that sending the wrong message? And I think the protests and the way people reacted to the protests were like, well, it's okay to do that for coronavirus. And instead of the message being, okay, we support the right to protest, but they could be spreading coronavirus. Because I think not only the protesters, but I think the people who didn't protest we're saying, well, wait a minute, if they can go out and do that, why can't we go out and do what we want to do? And I think that led to this relaxation across the board. And if you look, the spike across the country was right 2 to 3 weeks right after those protests. It was also right after May. And I think there was a general letting up. Now, the good news, I think, though, is that I think it's leveling off. I mean, the numbers have been high, and they've been consistently high in Florida and Texas and Arizona and California and here in Mississippi. I do think that exponential rise is starting to flatten out, and it does look like the hospitals have been able to absorb, that trail of hospitalization and that trail of ICU patients, and then ultimately the trail of deaths. I think they've been able to absorb it okay. I mean, a lot of hospitals are full or near full, but we're not busting at the seams. We're not turning people away at the door. We're not closing down, and so I think if it, knock on wood, if it doesn't get any worse, if this truly is the plateau. I think that with the tools we have, the new diagnostics and the new treatment, I think that we can weather the storm, and we may start to see a slide on the backside of it, much like the state of New York is experiencing.
So, I see, as you and I have talked about so many times before, hospitalizations, ICUs, the number of the rise in ICU patients and deaths are lagging indicator of behavior. And I think you may be right about the protests. I think it could have been a bunch of things swirling. It could be Memorial Weekend, it could be protest. The other thing is that President Trump wasn't wearing a mask. Governor Reeves wasn't wearing a mask. Legislators went to the session without masks on and didn't practice social distancing. And the Speaker of the House, the Lieutenant Governor, end up with COVID. And last I heard, over 40 legislators had COVID. So I think a lot of people, whether you're Democrats or Republicans or what, I think just a lot of people drop their guard. And maybe the reason why you're beginning to see the numbers start to sort of plateau, let's hope that that's what's happening, that people saw this and they said, oh my gosh, they got reminded again of the exponential growth, that this is a highly infectious disease, all those things, and they got careful again. And this comes back to the point that you've been trying to make, or been making from the very beginning, that if we just stay careful, the most important thing we can do is be careful. If we don't want our economy to shut down again, we have to be careful. And the barometer for shutting down is the stress on the hospital system. That's about a good sum up, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's right. You make some good points there. So like one of the things that interests me is when I look at and I hear people talk about cell phone data, and when the epidemic was ramping up, cell phone data, looking at how much people move, how mobile people are, people started to not move around, basically stay in their homes before there were even orders to do it. And then on the other side, when numbers went down, even though there were still orders to shelter in place, cell phone data showed people started moving around before they were supposedly allowed to go. And I think that you're right, people will adapt their behavior. They don't, and not everyone needs to be told what to do by the government, right? People will see, oh my gosh, cases are high in my area, and they naturally start to adapt their behavior, which is good. And as you said, like I said, I would have preferred for us to come out guns blazing with masks on the whole time, indoors the whole time, and then slowly let off the gas pedal. Instead, we kind of did it the other way around. But like I said, now that, again, there's this renewed awareness, and I think people are like, oh my goodness, we can't go back to being isolated in our homes. So wearing a mask is better than nothing. The president's on board with wearing a mask now. That message is consistent and clear now. Again, the masks aren't the only key. Also the key is to not go out when you're sick, to contact trace, to pull yourself out of the pool of people when you are ill. Those things are very important. So I think we're getting it.
What I'm noticing is that when you mentioned contact tracing, one of the interesting things is we had talked about having sort of this government mechanism that goes in and does all this tracing, but it seemed a little unpractical to me in the beginning, just because of the number of asymptomatic cases and whatever. Right. That the best contact tracing that's occurring today is actually within the families. That if someone in a family is exposed to it, then all the other family members are now aware of it, and they're doing sort of their own contact tracing. They're going to get tested, and you're seeing a rise in the number of people who are individually just going out and getting tested because they felt like they might have been exposed. You see that? Yeah,
definitely. And the CDC had recommended that get tested if you're exposed, even without symptoms. Now the problem with that is we simultaneously entered into another, not a shortage of testing, but that just backlogged all the reference labs. And so that does kind of make it hard to follow the data. So now I'm getting test results that are 10 to 14 days old. And so it's hard to figure out where we are. So certainly the increase in testing, we're finding a lot more asymptomatic cases, which is good, because then everyone they're exposed to should be quarantining for 2 weeks, and that should help curb the spread. The only problem is, again, man, now we're back to this testing backlog, which is crushing us again.
The other thing you and I talked about is on social media, you still have the deniers and the conspiracy theorists and all that. What I have found is that if someone is sort of wanting to believe this is some sort of conspiracy and they don't know anyone who has gotten COVID, then they sort of stay in that realm. But if they learn of someone who has it, or God forbid somebody dies of it, then it sort of changes their perspective. A couple of people just recently posted something on Facebook that was really, you would post if you were concerned about COVID and you wanted to make sure people got the message, and they would tag me on it as a way of wanting me to know that they're finally gotten the gospel. But unfortunately, in some cases, it took a death of someone near them that they realize. You know, the issue still is most people are going to survive this.
Right.
But the reality is that if we don't protect the vulnerable, if you're in contact with people who are vulnerable, you know, they're just as vulnerable today as they were when all this started, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's really remarkable when you look at this infection. It's so contagious. I mean, clearly it's just spreading. And you know, when people get together in groups, you know, funerals are big spread. You know, it's just, how do you go to a funeral and not hug people? You know, and so we see it, you know, spread at gatherings like that where people are close, and humans are social by nature, so it makes it so hard. And then you look at comparing this pandemic to other pandemics, the average age of death is still like 78. So it does markedly impact the elderly and the sick and the infirm way more than everybody else. And so it's like, I mean, you got to look at all those numbers and all that data, but it's like you say, it's still a big deal if it overwhelms the healthcare system. I don't think right now we are overwhelmed, though. I think right now we can handle it. And if this is as bad as it gets, I think we're going to be all right.
Let's do this. We'll come back on the other side of this. This is Dr. Nicholas Conger from Memorial. He is an infectious disease expert, and we'll continue the conversation at the other side.
Subscribe for free to the Coast View podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thousands of Bulldog fans have subscribed to the Thunder and Lightning podcast. Have you? On each episode, Brian Haydad and Joel Coleman give you an inside look at your Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Thunder and Lightning podcast is free and available on demand at supertalk.fm and on your smartphone. Just search for Thunder and Lightning on iTunes, Google Play, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thunder and Lightning from SuperTalk, Mississippi, covering the Bulldogs like no one else.
This is House Call for Health. There may be no greater medical mystery and no greater tragedy than sudden infant death syndrome. It used to be known as crib death. For no apparent reason, a presumably healthy sleeping baby dies. Medical experts don't have clear-cut answers to what causes sudden infant death, or SIDS, but now they have two risk factors: smoking and drinking during pregnancy beyond the first 3 months. A new study finds that babies whose mothers drank alcohol and smoked tobacco after the first trimester are at far greater risk of SIDS, 12 times greater. Previous studies showed a risk of smoking and drinking individually. This study says doing both drastically increases the danger. The research is sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, which is calling for greater publicity about the danger and improved screening at the very beginning of a pregnancy. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
SuperTalk. Nobody keeps Mississippi informed like we do. With 12 stations covering all 82 counties. If it happens in your state, we're on top of it. The news, the weather, the sports, and the talk that's important to you. The issues that matter to you, your family, and your bank account. It's all right here. And when you're away from home, depend on the SuperTalk app and supertalk.fm to stay in the know. We're proud to serve our fellow Mississippians. SuperTalk, Mississippi. Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Dr. Nicholas Conger, who is an infectious disease doctor and a friend of this show. He has such a practical point of view about this situation, and he actually expresses some. I guess if you have good news, it's that potentially we're beginning to see hopefully a plateau, and that so far hospitals, especially on the coast, have been able to deal with it. One of the things I heard the governor expressing in the last 24 hours is some frustration that when he looks at the school plans, there are so many different plans. Some schools have chosen not to go back into class, so they're going to try to go 100% e-learning. Other schools are not observing any kind of safe environment. They're just going back in full bore, which I don't think is going to be acceptable. I think some of those are already changing their plans. When I talk to superintendents along the coast, and I've had several of them recently, they have various evolutions of their plans, but they all seem to have a really smart approach to this. Try to do social distancing, try to keep the kids from having to go out into the hallways, do in between classes, and wearing face masks. They're doing those things. But so what's your current thinking on kids in school?
Right. And so I'm starting off the bat with that education is a necessity, right? We talked about only keeping essential things open. To me, education is essential. I think if we lose another year, if we lose 18 months of education, that's going to have a long lasting impact. And clearly not everyone can learn from distance learn. I mean, it's difficult for many adults. Some people do much better in the classroom, especially with younger kids. So I am a big proponent of getting kids in the classroom in a safe way. And he just talked about different people with different plans. And we've been trying to offer our services to look at different school plans, et cetera, and give our expertise on what they might be able to do. And we're even talking about, within Harrison County, offering services where we could even triage, like, should this student stay home today? Should this student, be extra social distanced for a few days, et cetera, and trying to work with the schools to keep them open. Because I do think learning in person is crucial. And I do think they can do it in a safe way. And like you said, one of the wonderful things about America, it's such a big country, and then we have state governments, and then we have local governments, and there's so many different ways to do things. And why not let different people do things slightly differently if they're all well thought out and see what works best, right? Why not? I mean, we adopt best practices in the workplace all the time. We're not going to get best practices if everybody shuts down. I mean, let's try different things. And so I'm a proponent for doing it in as safe a way as possible. Certainly with the mask wearing, if the kids are old enough to do that, minimizing, like you said, social interactions, keeping kids clustered with the same students all day so that there is a small outbreak that stays within those. Because remember, the kids are still not nearly as affected by this virus as adults. They are still much more likely to die of a flu than they are from a coronavirus. And we don't shut schools down during flu season. We keep going. And so I think that there's a way through this. And the little kids, they're not big spreaders, which again is different than any other virus. I do think the teenagers, they're doing their share of spreading to their families, but the little kids aren't. And then finally, when the kids are in school, they're not home with grandparents because people have to work, right? So if the parents need to work, what are they going to do with their kids if they're not at home? They're going to give them to their grandparents or to an elderly neighbor who's not working to watch them. And so I do think we should try it. I think we should try it with some smart plans. And like I say, we're offering our expertise to look at people's plans and let's give it a shot.
It's so interesting. You're right about this. There's a lot of innovation happening around how to do this. And there isn't just one way. The truth is we're in uncharted territory. And I think it's important that these really smart administrators, superintendents of school systems throughout the state, continue to communicate with one another, which they're doing, and then sort of take the best of each other's plans and try some different things. Like for example, one of the things they used to do is if a kid had a fever, they would send them to the nurse and they would just kind of wait it out there. Well, they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to call the parent and they're going to get the parent to come get them immediately. Things like how to manage the bus system. I never really thought much about that, and getting parents involved in bringing the kids to school, opening the schools earlier so they can get these kids processed through the school because parents have to go to work earlier. I mean, there's a lot of innovation.
That's right. And I did want to add to my answer, again, getting back to the one size fits all doesn't always work. I do hope that the schools will have an online option for those people who just feel completely uncomfortable. I'm not for forcing anyone to do anything. And so if they feel uncomfortable, at least offering them an online option. I even like some of the stuff at the state level talking about reimbursing them for other programs. I mean, we have homeschooled our children in the past. There's a lot of really good online homeschool programs that are ready-made, and so if somebody wants to access that, why not encourage that if they're scared to send their child? And so I do like the innovation and the opportunity for people to explore other ways, but I do think that in-person learning needs to be offered.
Well, the use of technology is so important. One of the administrators told me, we're not talking about rushing back into the classroom. We're talking about rushing back into continuing education. So by using technology, if a kid lives with a vulnerable person, or the kid is a vulnerable person themselves, then what they're doing is they're using technology in a way that enables that kid to literally participate in the classroom as it takes place. And then, of course, they're recording them so they can go back and look at those lesson plans later. Just really, really smart use of technology. And I think we're going to learn a lot, and hopefully we don't see an uptick when school gets back into session. We may see a little bit, but hopefully it's nothing that's going to be super concerning. Hey, before we end the show today, I want to know the latest on treatment. What's the latest there?
So, there's been a big talk about inhaled steroids, and certainly some people are using those early. And so we've been pushing out some inhaled steroids along with some inhalers like albuterol to open up the passages. So patients who have cough and pulmonary symptoms, we're trying to push that out early. If they have an oxygen requirement, there is a study now that shows, I think we've talked about before, the steroids decrease mortality and they do better. So even as an outpatient, if they need oxygen, not only are we pushing oxygen to them as outpatients, we're pushing the oral or the systemic steroids to them. And I think that that's helping a lot. And that's decreasing hospitalizations. Once they get in the hospital, they need more and more oxygen. We're offering them plasma. The early reports of plasma showed that this is other people's convalescent serum, so it has antibodies against coronavirus. And we're seeing that has also decreased morbidity and mortality. So we're pushing plasma on them if they accept it. And then finally, if they still need help beyond that, and they're going towards more and more oxygen needs, we're using remdesivir, and we've had decent access to that. And so we have multiple tools at our disposal. In addition, the pulmonologists have gotten a lot better at basically using BiPAP, which is a non-invasive, so the tube's not down the throat. It's a non-invasive ventilation, and they basically have it on ventilator-type settings, but it's a face mask on the patient. And keeping them on BiPAP and not intubating them is leading to a lot of people getting better without that tube going in, and that is contributing greatly to better outcomes. So I do believe our treatments are better. Definitely, like we've talked about the spike in cases, we're treating them so much better. We're getting them out of the hospital a lot faster.
In some ways, you've had to well, not you, because this is your specialty, but some doctors have had to unlearn some of their typical treatment protocols and learn an entirely new approach. Is that true?
Well, myself included. This is all new stuff, and we're using a lot of medicines that are approved for other things, like the hydroxychloroquine and some HIV medicines. There's still some promise with some of those medicines even. But there's no great treatment for a virus. We talk about supportive care. Well, what is supportive care? It's a conglomeration of all these little things that, when added together, may help the patient not go over the edge and end up on the ventilator and dying. And so yes, we are all learning the best ways to support these patients.
So we're hearing some potentially good news, at least as it relates to like picking up the trials on a vaccine. Are there any new medications coming into testing as well to treat symptoms?
There is one medicine I'm aware of named leronlimab, which is another HIV medication. The reason that they're trying all these different HIV medications is because those are antivirals. HIV is a virus, and if this virus has something in shares some features or characteristics with HIV, then those medications may potentially help. There's a trial of that going on in Mexico. There's a few other antivirals out there that people are looking at. They're still looking at the combinations of, like I said, some are still looking at hydroxychloroquine with some HIV medicines called protease inhibitors and things like that to see if those combinations help. And we might find that a whole bunch of little things add up to a moderate improvement.
Well, that's good to see. Hey, I read an interesting story this morning in National Geographic. It was posted just in the last 24 hours. A story about Yellowstone National Park being overwhelmed with people. And what's happening is people are being reintroduced to the outdoors, and places like Yellowstone are getting overwhelmed with people. And, my advice is really you ought to do your research before you go to a place like that, because you don't want to be around densities of people. This would be a great opportunity to enjoy Mississippi. Stay at home, go do the Blues Trail, take in our wonderful state. But anywhere you're going to go, whether it's Yellowstone or the Coast Coliseum, if you're going to be in a congested environment, not a good thing still, right?
Right. Yeah. Again, I always say the great outdoors is safe. So a camping trip is wonderful unless you're camping with, hundreds of other people right next to each other. So yeah, I agree. Enjoy the outdoors. Being cooped up inside is, and maybe that's why there's a spike too, is the weather got hot, right? And so people are going inside air conditioning. That might have contributed to the spike as well. Enjoy the outdoors and still try to keep your circle small.
Dr. Nicholas Conger, infectious disease doctor and friend to the show. Like I said at the beginning, we're going to rename the show the Dr. Nicholas Conger Show. He's been contributing so much. But we look forward to the next time in a couple of weeks. We'll stay in touch with you. Thank you so much for your practical and basic advice to our listeners. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the forum and I look forward to the next time.
Coming up next, we have Angel Myers McElrath, who is the district attorney for Jackson, George, and Greene County, and a great friend of Coastview. We'll see you after this.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Facebook. Facebook.com/SuperTalk MS Coast 103.1.
Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse@telesouth.com. That's JESSE@telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
We serve on the front lines, fighting an invisible enemy and caring for our communities with courage and compassion. The COVID-19 crisis has challenged us like never before. Now, the men and women of America's hospitals and health systems are counting on Congress and the administration to stand with us as we stand ready to care for you in every way, every day.
This is House Call for Health. There may be no greater medical mystery and no greater tragedy than sudden infant death syndrome. It used to be known as crib death. For no apparent reason, a presumably healthy sleeping baby dies. Medical experts don't have clear-cut answers to what causes sudden infant death, or SIDS, but now they have two risk factors: smoking and drinking during pregnancy beyond the first 3 months. A new study finds that babies whose mothers drank alcohol and smoked tobacco after the first trimester are at far greater risk of SIDS, 12 times greater. Previous studies showed a risk of smoking and drinking individually. This study says doing both drastically increases the danger. The research is sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, which is calling for greater publicity about the danger and improved screening at the very beginning of a pregnancy. For more health news, go to foxnewshealth.com. House Call for Health. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News.
You could be spreading the coronavirus without realizing you have it, so do your part and stay home. It's important to limit in-person interaction with anyone outside of your immediate household, but phone and video chat are safe ways to connect. It's also important to limit social gatherings. If you need essential items like food and medicine, try using a delivery service. If you must leave your house for essential items, or if you want to take a walk for exercise, make sure to wear a cloth face covering. Stay at least 6 feet away from other people. Try not to touch frequently touched surfaces like light signals, street signs, or benches. And wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds as often as possible. This advice applies to people of any age, including teens and younger adults. It takes all of us to slow the spread of the coronavirus, so stay home unless absolutely necessary. Visit coronavirus.gov for the latest information.
If a muckety muck wants you to hear what they gotta say, they come here first and sit down with Gallo and JT. This is ground zero for all Mississippi muckety mucks. SuperTalk Mississippi. Watch your favorite SuperTalk shows in HD. Just go to supertalktv.com. Ever wonder what goes on in the studio during the shows? Now you can watch what happens in HD. SuperTalk TV, streaming now on supertalktv.com. Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90 Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast View, the show that celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi a better place to live, work, and play. And one of those people who continue to work in the trenches and do amazing work is the district attorney for Jackson, George, and Greene County, Angel Myers McElrath.
Hey,
how are
Ricky.
you doing, Angel?
Doing great. Good to see you.
Good to see you, old friend. As I was mentioning to you offline, when you and I did our extended Coast View session together, which incidentally we'll put a link to with this video if people want to go back and see your whole story, your amazing story. It was the 11th show, show. And since then, we have done, Kyle and I have done 160.
That's incredible, Ricky. That's wonderful.
We missed one day. Last week, SuperTalk had a radiothon. It's something they do every year.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So, for kids. Yeah. And so
they did it for the Canopy, right? Was it for Canopy?
Palmer House.
Palmer House. Okay.
Yeah,
that's right.
Palmer House. And so anyway, the long and short of it is that, since January 6th, we haven't missed a date. And it's been a great inspiration. I went back this morning actually and listened to our conversation. It was so special. We kind of walked through your life's journey, a lot of tragedy, but a lot of learning. And you define what it's like, what a human being with resiliency is. Life does go on, and you find your way to give back to the community. And that's kind of your story, isn't it?
I want it to be my story. I want to give back to the community, and I want to see people. I want people to see me and know that, look, we can do it. Whatever it is, we can face it and we can move forward.
There was a funny, well, not funny, but interesting time, because I've known you for a lot of your life. I've always been a big fan of yours, even when you were younger. And you've always had this sort of light in your eye. You could tell that you were going to accomplish something big in your life. But at that moment in the conversation when I said, well, there's a tough part of you too, which is don't mess with Angel.
Right.
You were meant to be a prosecutor, weren't you?
Right. I really think I was. I love what I do. I'm in a position to help those that can be helped, and to hold accountable people that need, sometimes that help is in accountability. And I'm also in a position to protect our community, to protect our children, to protect my neighbors, my family from dangerous people. And it's a privilege to do the work that I do.
I've had Phil Bryant on the show a couple of times. He's special friend. He was a terrific governor and leader in this state. He appointed you in November 2018. You were subsequently elected in 2019, November 2009, about a year later. But that had to have been special to have been appointed by Governor Phil Bryant.
It was. You know, I talked to my dad on the way up to Jackson to meet with the governor and his staff. I guess it was kind of an interview. And he, counseled me the whole way up there. And when I got there, of course, I was nervous, but Governor Bryant just put me at ease and let me talk about my experience and what I could do for our community. And I was so grateful that he trusted me with this job. I'm grateful that the community has trusted me with this job. I really love being able to serve Jackson, Georgia, and Greene County in this capacity.
It's interesting you went up there with your dad, Jim.
No, he was on the phone. I drove myself, but I had him on the phone the whole time.
Okay.
Daddy's always told me I was the little train that could. So
he's a great guy and a good friend.
Yes.
You had been assistant district attorney for 12 years, but it reminds me. Joel Carter Senator Joel Carter had a conversation with him this week, and he also went up before he was elected in the special election to have a meeting with the Republican Party. With his father, he went up there, and Phil Bryant was there, and Phil Bryant introduced him as the rising star in the Republican Party, and he said Joel said I hadn't even been elected yet, and after the meeting he walks over and whispers in Joel's ear. He said, I put some pressure on you, didn't I?
Yeah, it's that don't let me down.
Don't let me down.
Don't let me down.
He's really good at that. But what a great leader, and he gave you an opportunity after really having cut your teeth, as I said, for 12 years as assistant a district attorney, to come in and lead that department. So how has the last several months been for you in this sort of pandemic environment?
I think for everybody, this is just a difficult time. It's a moving target. It's constantly trying to figure out what's the best decision for today. Our staff has not stopped. I can tell you your court system has stayed open. Our staff continues to work every single day to make sure that the justice system continues even in the midst of this pandemic.
Yeah, how has technology changed things for you?
It's funny because I talk to parents all the time about technology, and I'm like, the evils of technology. But for us in the court system, it has helped us tremendously. When our building got shut down, the county shut down for a period of time. I don't remember exactly how long. Our lawyers stayed in contact through Zoom meetings. And so we would meet. I could lay my eyes on my people, make sure that they looked good, they looked healthy, they're doing good. We meet with witnesses and we meet with victims through Zoom. It has been an incredible tool for us. We've also done training. So we've, used this as an opportunity to do training through Zoom. And so we've had several trainings with the Attorney General's office and really been privileged to be able to do that.
It's been so interesting. No matter who I talk to, whether it's someone in the medical field using, telemedicine or education field, doing, they're using technology in so many different ways to do at-home learning, et cetera. I had a really terrific visit with Tim Holloman, the attorney for
Yes,
Harrison
I think the world of Tim.
And, he talked about how technology was being used. For example, used to, you'd have to go to the jail and just and wait. And they would have to have several guards involved and meeting with a prisoner, et cetera. And they've been using technology to be able to have those meetings.
Yes.
Some are still face to face, but it just really has touched every aspect. And, in some ways we might not go back completely. I mean, I don't think our new normal is using technology, isn't it?
Look, last year, the very first trial that I had as district attorney was a capital murder. And in the midst of the trial, we were going, was a nor'easter. And our expert forensic pathologist had to fly in the nor'easter. Well, she couldn't fly. And so we had to, trial by fire, take her testimony, virtually through technology. And so ever since then, we have used it. It saves taxpayers money. You're not flying in witnesses. You're not transporting people. It's a great, great tool. Our judges are studying up on it. I know they're looking at different ways that we can use it in the courtroom. Our sheriff, Mike Ezel for Jackson County, he has got incredible capabilities out there. And so I'm really proud of what the capabilities are, and I'm looking forward to the way we use it in the future.
One of the things that we talked about when we were together before, it was sort of the conversation about redemption, that one of the things that you want, that good people at times will make bad decisions.
That's right.
At the same time, there are bad guys that need to be taken off the streets.
That's right.
And you have to sort through that. Has it become more difficult to sort through things like that in this sort of pandemic environment? Or
no, I don't think so. The facts are what they are. A person's history is what it is. The circumstances are what they are. COVID is just a factor that we weigh in determining, maybe what to set somebody's bond at or something like that. I don't believe COVID is a get out of jail free. I don't believe in releasing people because of COVID. And so, we have the same responsibilities now that we had before in really evaluating each individual case and making recommendations based on that particular case.
Yeah, one of the things I wonder about is, has COVID and the pressures that it's put on families and people, has it changed the nature of some of the crimes that you're seeing?
I don't think so. The violent crimes always make the news. But our population in the Jackson County Jail, for example, has been pretty consistent from pre-COVID to now. And so I think that's kind of an indication of where we're at. But, I haven't really had time to study the numbers.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You have your day job to do. So tell me about your team. How's your team doing?
They're doing great. I am blessed with the most incredible team that is innovative. They think outside the box. They push me. I'm an old school. Technology is great, but I want to hold a book. I want to, I want paper. I want all these things. They've helped us do things like electronic discovery, for example. So, every case we have to exchange the evidence in the case, right? The case file, and we do that. We call that process discovery. And my team has encouraged me, and we've moved now into electronic discovery exchange. And so I've got the most innovative, outside the box thinking team, hardworking. They've never stopped. My lawyers have worked nonstop. I think they've worked harder during COVID and working from home to make sure that we're getting it right and nothing is stopping.
We're coming to the end of this segment. When we come back, I want to talk about. I had a great conversation with Senator Bryce Wiggins recently, and we discussed you and your long relationship with him and the work that he's doing in the legislature these days. And want to mention, you and I need to have an upcoming conversation about human trafficking.
Yes.
But there was an important anniversary, I think yesterday actually. I want to talk about that just for a second, and then a few other things, and we'll come back to that after this break. But this is Angel Myers McEnrath, who is the district attorney for Jackson, George, and Greene County. We'll be back after this break.
Thank you.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Twitter at SuperTalk MSGC.
Feeling down? Here's your prescription for a daily dose of good news and positive vibes. Good Things with Rebecca Turner. Every afternoon, Rebecca highlights all the good things happening right here in the state you call home. Daily exposure to Good Things with Rebecca Turner may cause smiling, feelings of positivity, happiness, and even laughter. When you experience these symptoms, tell your friends to listen.
Okay.
Weekdays starting at 2 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi, and now on Amazon Alexa devices.
Hey, I'm Steve Azar, and you never know who or what you'll hear when I spend a Mississippi Minute with my friends. Talking to Paul Thorne, Mississippi true treasure, really incredible recording artist, singer, songwriter, has been doing it a long time, doing it the right way.
It's almost like a Forrest Gump thing because, I was a boxer, / I worked in a furniture factory, / I had a gig 2 nights a week playing my acoustic guitar in a pizza restaurant, / I was in the National Guard, and, all this stuff was going on at the same time. / I had a writing contract with Rick Hall and Fame.
In a Mississippi Minute. Be sure to check out In a Mississippi Minute with me, Steve Azar, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk Mississippi app, and now available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher.
We know that we're asking Americans to do a lot right now. So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible to this virus.
A question I often get asked is, why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
Social distancing is really physical separation of people.
It's what we refer to when we ask people to stay at least 6 feet apart.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants, not going to theaters where there are a lot of people. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others who might actually be infected or infect you.
We all have a role to play in preventing person-to-person spread of this disease, which can be deadly for vulnerable groups. For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
What decisions are being made by state lawmakers, and how will they affect you, your family, and community? If you listen, you'll know. SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fl.
Hi, I'm Billy Kinder, host of Big Billy Kinder Outdoors here. The show Saturdays at 1, right here on SuperTalk Mississippi. Turkeys, whitetail, Grenada Lake crappie, or Gulfport redfish. We enjoy it all, especially when you're in camp with us on SuperTalk Mississippi. Get out of the house and over to Big Play today. 2 massive arcades, bowling, go-karts, 2 mini golf courses, a 2-story state-of-the-art laser tag arena, bumper cars, and right now get a $50 game card for only $25. Visit our station's Facebook and print on demand so you can play at Big Play Entertainment Center now. These deals won't last long, so make sure you get your half-off deal. Big Play Entertainment Center, Highway 90 Biloxi. Bowl, play, eat. Go to our station's Facebook to get your half-off deal now. Hey, want to come work for the #1 radio group on the coast? TeleSouth Media has a great opportunity for an outside sales consultant. Get paid while having fun and work in the exciting, fast-paced world of radio. We have award-winning stations like 97.9 CPR Rocks, 105.9 The Monkey, G96.7, SuperTalk 103.1, and 103.5 The Possum. Take the first step towards a new and rewarding career. Submit your resume to Jesse at telesouth.com. That's JESSE at telesouth.com. TeleSouth Media is an equal employment opportunity employer.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Angel Myers McEnrath, who is the district attorney for Jackson, George, and Greene counties. Hey, before we went to the break, I mentioned Bryce Wiggins. I've actually had 2 incredible leaders in the Senate on recently. One was Jeremy England, and the other was Bryce Wiggins. Mm-hmm. What do you have to say about both of those guys?
I think they are great guys. I think we're lucky to have that type of leadership in our legislature. We need more people like them representing us. They vote based on what's the right thing to do. They follow the law. They are just really good men to be representing us. And I'm just really proud to be their friend, and I'm proud of the work that they do.
And you had an opportunity to work with Bryce, and what I enjoyed about
I taught him everything he knows.
Y'all worked together for a lot of years, but what he did is he took that sort of ground level knowledge, that experience, that one case at a time, and going through that process in the district attorney's office, and then bringing that to the legislature and saying, okay, what issues did I have in my local on the ground world, and how can I fix those now that I'm in the legislature?
Right.
That makes a big difference, doesn't it?
It does. I think it's important for the legislature, when they're making criminal laws and they're making laws that affect criminal prosecutions, that they know really how that translates in the courtroom and how it translates to us actually being able to get justice and hold accountable and have certainty in sentencing. We sit face to face with victims, and they look to us for answers. And we need to, as prosecutors, be able to say, here's what the law is. MDOC is going to follow it. There's a lot to it. And so I'm glad that we have people that have experience as prosecutors up there.
So one of the missions that you went on, and we don't have time to get into it now, people can see it by looking at the extended Coast View session, was the revised child abuse law in the Lonnie Smith Act.
Yes.
And incredible work there. And you continue to be really focused on kids and protecting children. One of the kind of clarion calls that I have is human trafficking and focusing on human trafficking. And you and I will actually dedicate a show in the future to having a conversation about that. But it's real, isn't it? It's a real major problem that we have in our society today.
There's a lot of darkness in our society right here on the Gulf Coast. People think these things happen other places, and they do, but they happen here too. And I'm proud that human trafficking, child abuse, child exploitation is getting more notice. That's important. We need to educate parents, our church members, our teachers, your neighbors need to be aware of what's going on and how to protect children. And so I look forward to that conversation with you.
Me too. So yesterday was an important anniversary. Tell me about that.
It was. So yesterday was the unfortunate anniversary of Adam Walsh's abduction. And, he was abducted in the 80s and was murdered. His father then started the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which has done such incredible things to protect children, that has trained prosecutors, equipped us with the knowledge, to be able to prosecute some of these cases. There's a lot of technical knowledge you need to understand. You need to understand how things get on a computer. You need to understand how to present evidence. And that center has been instrumental, not just in helping actual child victims and finding child victims, but also in educating law enforcement and prosecutors in how to do our jobs.
So in the experts I talked to, it's hard to even say this phrase, but that there is a market for children. There's a market for children, that people literally, like I mentioned to you, like a bale of hay or a bale of cotton, there's a market for children. That's unbelievable. And none of us can rest until every child is protected, and there's work to be done. Anyway, you and I are going to come back, and we're going to have an extended discussion about that.
We are.
That's really, really, really important.
And I thank you for your passion and commitment to bringing awareness.
I always was sort of focused on it as a publisher. No matter where I was, it was something that was always near and dear to me. But my conversation with Steve Azar and this song that he wrote about it, that really called "The Sky Is Falling," really got my attention. It's just an amazingly important song. I think it will become the anthem for human trafficking in America.
I look forward to listening to it. Thank you for sending it to me.
Yeah, I wanted you to see it. So, hey, in the short time we have left, what do you do today? What's on your agenda today?
So today I've already had a meeting with the CAC. We've got files to review for a grand jury that'll be coming up. We've got cases that we're reviewing to see, can this be resolved absent a trial? We're managing dockets. We're contacting victims. I mean, it is nonstop working the backside and the behind the scenes of the system. We're having court. It's not like it used to be, but we're making it work and we're getting things done. And so it's a busy day. I've got, about 16 boxes of files in my office on my table that we've got to go through, but we get it done.
Well, you get it done because you're doggedly determined to get it done and not let there be this huge backlog. And the other thing is you've got a great team, as you pointed out, working around you. You're a good friend to me. You're a good friend to the show, and I can't wait in a couple of weeks to come back and have an extended discussion with you about human trafficking. Until then, God bless you, my friend.
You too, my friend. Bye, Kyle.
Okay.
Ricky, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast View on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.